Welcome to the stage the co-founder of Summit, Jeff Rosenthal, and the founder of Trilogy Software, ESW Capital, and the principal of the Alpha School, Joe Liemandt.
Hello, hello. How you guys doing? Thank you for being here. Hey, Joe.
Hello, how's it going?
What's up?
Glad to be here.
What's going on? Fill us in. Give us all the hot gossip.
All right. What got me here, I guess, the short version is I'm a principal of a school now, full-time, been doing it for 2 years. And the short history of the 25 years before that was sort of just the classic. I was a Stanford student, dropped out, lived in a garage, built a tech company.
The classic. Okay, we can expand upon it a little bit further. Tell the audience a little bit about Trilogy.
A little bit about Trilogy was I was sitting in a class and the professor's like, it was actually artificial intelligence back then, which is not like today. 90s AI was a different set of things, expert systems, not neural nets. Anyway, he's like, if somebody could ever solve this problem around building an expert system, it would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I remember sitting in class saying, why are we in class? And so I got a buddy of mine, and it was 5 of us in total, 2 of us dropped out, and started this company to build it. We thought it would be super easy. It took years and years longer than we expected, but it actually ended up, this product, expert system, ended up working. And it was actually, its claim to fame in the 90s was it was the first AI product to sell $1 billion worth.
Awesome. And was it a good outcome for you? Did the company succeed?
So the company succeeded, and actually still does to this day, is still here, made billions of dollars, and it was a big success.
It's a leading question. I knew the answer.
And big success. And then 2 years ago, when Gen AI came out, which was totally different than the AI we did, I went to my team and I was like, guys, for 25 years you've been telling me you could run this company way better than I could. So we're going to see. I'm going to go be a principal. Good luck. And so now it's still available. I'm a nightmare shareholder who demands they have big dividends that I can waste in education.
Wonderful.
And
what was the path to education? Why education of all things?
A set of different things that came together. First, I hated school. I hated school always growing up. I dropped out of Stanford. I was almost expelled from high school for skipping all the time. I thought class was just a complete waste. And so I'd always been, there's got to be a better way to do it. And tried over the years to work. I live in Austin. I worked with AISD, HISD, trying to reform the school system super unsuccessfly. And then 2 years ago, when Gen AI came out, I was like, okay, there's finally a tool that actually can fix this. We are going to be able to change education for the 2.5 billion kids throughout the world. And 10 years from now, we're going to wake up and education is going to be completely different than everybody in this room experienced.
And so how did the journey start? Tell us a little bit about the foundation of Alpha School.
Sure. Well, let me spin back. Let me go back even a little farther, just about education in general. Just as context, which is, when you think about the largest untapped resource in the world, it's not solar energy, it's not nuclear energy, it's human potential, right? The most important job of a society is to raise their kids, to unlock their potential. There's nothing more important for a society to do, and over thousands of years, societies have done it differently. Thousands of years ago, right? What you'd have, if you want to roll all the way back, right, to the Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, Alexander the Great, right? You had rich families, had individual tutors who would coach their kids. And then about 150 years ago or so, we have our current system that was developed, and this was so that everybody could get educated, not just the rich. And this is what we all know as the teacher in front of a classroom model, right? And it's actually one of the things that's the most equal thing on earth. You can go to the poorest school district in India or sub-Saharan Africa, and there is a teacher in front of a classroom. The classroom's not very nice, but it's a teacher in front of a classroom. You can go to the $40,000 private school in Austin, Texas, and it's a super nice building, but it's a teacher in front of a classroom model. And so that's been going on. That's what we all know. It's what our parents know. It's all what we expect. And then about 40 years ago, and it's been 150 years, 40 years ago, the schools of education at all the universities, Stanford, Harvard, Oxford, they started learning science, right? The science of learning. How do kids grow, develop, and learn? And one of the first things that happened, as they started researching this, was they realized that the teacher in front of a classroom model was the worst way to learn. Better than not teaching them, but literally the worst way to learn. And over the last 40 years, there's been just 10,000 papers that have been published about how kids can learn 2, 5, 10 times faster, right? Just dramatically better ways than the teacher in front of a classroom model. Now, it hasn't been cost reasons, right? The first paper there's written, famous paper there's written when I was in high school, just said, well, this is obviously unrealistic to provide this to every kid. Just can't do it, right? And now with generative AI and advances in technology, you can take all that learning science, package it up, and now provide it in a mechanism to every kid on the planet. And I was giving a talk to the ministers of education of a lot of different countries, and this was 2 years ago when I realized it. Sort of fast forward to where we are today. We're not there yet, but sometime in the next 5 years-ish, every kid, every 4-year-old is going to get a tablet, and it is going to teach them everything they need to know in 2 hours a day. Right? That is coming. It's going to have it. If you're the head of an educational system, you have to realize, what am I going to do with my educational system when that happens? As a new principal, there is one thing I've learned, that the parents don't want you to send the kids home after 2 hours. So what do they do the rest of the day? Right? It's going to totally transform how education's done, because there is no reason to have kids chained to a desk for 6 hours a day and then send them home with tons of homework. Just not going to happen.
And you talk about giving students superpowers with AI. Do you mind expounding upon that? I mean, one, I'd love for you to talk a bit more on how you're achieving Common Core, the successes that you guys have had, how they're learning the same amount in 2 hours a day. And then I'd love to know how you're using those tools to empower, these great kids. How are you helping them grow in other areas outside of just that, basic core education component?
Great. So we sort of divide the day into two parts. The morning 2 hours, which you should think is Common Core: reading, writing, arithmetic, right? Math, science, language, English. And the AI tutors, the kids come in. There is not a teacher in front of the classroom. It is literally just one-on-one. And the tutor is able to use everything taught. For those who know cognitive load theory and learning science, right? It's relatively easy to actually teach a kid where they learn twice as much in 2 hours a day as sitting in class for 6. So we have schools, we have thousands of kids around the world actually, who use this system and are able to get through what we had to spend 6 hours a day, 12 years in class, and they're able to crush through that at their own pace, dramatically faster. And then the second part of the day is all around what should you do, and so what we do is create project-based life skills. And I bet if I took a survey here and said, what are the three most important life skills, I'd actually get a lot more than 3. Everybody has a different idea of what are the life skills that you really want to teach your kid, right? Leadership, teamwork, grit, entrepreneurship, public speaking, receiving feedback, right? Whatever category it is. And so we actually have a afternoon curriculum, which is all these life skills, and we create workshops, project-based workshops for all the kids where they teach them all of those skills. And so, for grit, and we think of, well, how do you grade these life skills? And so, like, for grit, we literally are like, okay, well, I guess every third grader should be able to do a Rubik's Cube, right? So at our school, every third grader does a Rubik's Cube, right? And every seventh and eighth grader.
Really? Every kid?
Every
is
kid.
a third grader? So that's some move fast, some it takes, I imagine, quite some time for them to get that done, no?
So in the workshops, the first time we rolled it out, this was 2 years ago when I first came in, parents were like, it's impossible. My kid can't do a Rubik's Cube. That's super impossible. And one of the things you'll realize as a parent, if you can't do it, you generally think your kid can't, right? And it's just a rule of thumb. And back to our school, we literally have parents at the beginning of the year list out 5 things they think are literally impossible for their kid. And then we have the students do it during the year. And it's one of the greatest things in the world when, this is getting off your question, but I think it's an important thing, which is one of the things you have to realize is we have so lowered our expectation of kids' capability because of the standardized school system that we just have all wrong expectations of what these kids could do. They are limitless. They will blow your mind on why we're getting such amazing results is because we let the kids, we unlock them. Back to my Alexander the Great. I think he conquered the world by the time he was college age. And nowadays we're like, I hope my kid shows up for class. It's just these. So Rubik's Cube would be an example. We break it. We do 6-week sessions with 1 break week between them during the year. And so at the beginning of the session, we said, okay, kids, there'll be a time block in the afternoon where you get to work on your Rubik's Cube. Now we all teach them learn to learn, right? Because it's not, so they go on YouTube and find videos that teach them how to do, Rubik's Cube. And at the end of the first session, everybody except 2 kids had finished their Rubik's Cube. And then in the first week of session 2, the other 2 finished. And so literally within, 8 weeks, 7 weeks, every kid was able to do a Rubik's Cube. And the key on those, when you back to teaching kids that they can do the impossible, right? One of the things you always want to do with a kid is teach them growth mindset, right? You can do anything. And so what our guides do, and we'll talk about how the teacher role evolves in this world where they're not teaching 7th grade science, but our guides, right, they have what we call confidence anchors with kids. Part of teaching kids they can do things is they think it's impossible too. And then when they do that, you're able to use that to build up their confidence anchor so the next big challenge they have, you can always remind them, was this like the Rubik's Cube thing? Like where you said you couldn't do it and then, oh, look, you can do it in less than a minute now. And so you're always constantly trying to help build up their self-confidence. And you build up self-confidence not by telling kids they're great. It's actually by putting them through things where they struggle, sometimes fail on their road to success. And that is actually what leads to long-term confidence.
So what's the GRIT program for the 7th graders? I cut you off.
Oh, 7th grade, we do Tough Mudder, like the big obstacle course. Yeah. We have a set of, you can imagine a set of middle school girls who don't like PE and definitely do not like rolling in the mud, right? And it's one of the things. It's 2. It's grit plus teamwork, where everybody in the class has to pass the course and finish the course. So literally, other students will carry people who are struggling through it and bring it all through.
So amazing. And I love how you were describing how you identify and help kids really learn what are their definitive characteristics, what are the things that they truly love. You mentioned it with even your own daughters, how you help them both on the things that are not their strengths, like when you recognize that something is perhaps a weakness that they need to grow, and then how you build a real process to help them define self-identity, and then how you lean into being exceptional at that thing. Do you mind touching on those?
Sure. So, back to one of the things. It's amazing when you have 4 hours a day to actually teach kids these life skills, how much you can actually teach them and how young they are at that age. So we start, once you hit middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade time frame, right? You kids are becoming independent, right? It's their first time. They're not doing everything the parents say, and they're developing their own identity, but they don't know who they are. Right? And actually in today's world, right, a lot of kids get sucked into massive screen time. I sit and play video games all day. I'm scrolling some social media all day. And so the first exercise we do when you move into our middle school is what we call the values Ikigai 168 it's a complicated name, but what it is the kids sit down and do a values chart. Who am I? Right? How do I see myself? What do I really value? Then the second phase is, okay, do the Japanese Ikigai project, for those of you who know, where what are you talented at, right? What do you love to do? And what does the world value? And how do you figure those 3 things out? And then, and that helps them define, what do I love? What do I not love? What do I want to work on? Who do I want to be as a person? And then we do the 168-hour project, which is they literally just track every hour of their week, And the greatest day of the world is when they have to reconcile the two. Because you'll find that kids' view of themselves, yet you are what you do, they actually spend their time completely differently. And so to the example, my daughter came home when she was in 7th grade after doing this exercise, and self-confidence is not one of her issues. She came home and she's like, wow, I guess I'm going to be the world's best TikTok scroller. Right? And it was an incredibly powerful thing because she woke up and realized that's not who I want to be. And for parents who have middle school kids who are starting to scoring stuff, one of the things that's true is kids do not want to be consumers. Kids want to be great, right? They want to do awesome things. They want to be creators. And so after we do this whole exercise, we then have a Be a Creator, Not a Consumer workshop where they all learn, okay, I'm not just going to play video games, I'm going to build video games, or I'm going to do something around it. I have one kid who's like, I want to be an investor, and so he's like researching every video game stock in the world to figure out how to invest and make money on it because he likes it. In my daughter's case, she's like, I have to actually go figure out how to be a creator, not just scrolling. And today, she's a junior in high school. She gets about 5 million views a day on TikTok. She gives safe teen dating advice and is almost shipping an AI dating coach, and that actually helps teenagers figure out how to navigate, today's dating scene. I think it mostly tells boys be better.
It's incredible. And you touched on guides. You touched on how teachers evolve in this type of an environment.
So we have no guides who teach academics, right? So there's no teachers who teach academics. We call them guides and coaches. Everybody, here's, rolling back, a couple things that's really important is, first off, teachers really matter, right? Adults who help kids grow up really matter. We're not going to have the random AI bot raise your kids. But you have to be able to take, every adult had one or two teachers in their life who changed their life, right? Where it's like, wow, right? And everybody has that. But what's interesting is it wasn't the teacher in front of a classroom model that was great. And it wasn't because they graded one of your tests really well or had that super awesome lesson plan, right? It was because they got to know you and they were motivational of what you could do and achieve, right? They inspired you to greatness, or they provided the emotional support to help you get there, right? It was either motivational or emotional support that is actually what a great teacher is about, not I'm crushing the quiz grading. And so what we've done with the tutors, we move, right, the lesson plan and the quiz grading out of their job, and they're exclusively measured on how do they motivate and support kids. And they have all day, every day to do it. So during the 2-hour session in the morning when the kids are all, with their apps, learning, we use 25-minute Pomodoros as the cycle. And so the guides will take one student out of it while the rest are still doing it and have a one-on-one, right, with every kid during the school week. And it's just, and that one-on-one is, how was your weekend? How'd the soccer game go? What's going? What are your challenges, right? What are you worried about? How can I help you? And they really get to know these kids at just a real fundamental level. And that's what allows kids to flourish, is because they know they're supported, right? And, we talk about at the kindergarten level, we wrap the kids in love, right? And that's the critical part. As the kids get older, they're like, whoa, I'm an adolescent, I don't need all that. But
And I love talking to you about motivation and bridging the motivation gap. And I think some of these things on the surface too are actually quite unheard of, right? The ways in which that you'd be willing to get a kid through extrinsic motivation to grow into an intrinsic motivation. Do you mind touching on that?
Sure. So motivation is by far the most important thing in education. There's nothing even a close second. That when we look at it, we believe even taking the AI tutor, ed tech has failed, right, for 30 years. Ed tech after ed tech keeps coming out, and test scores keep going down, right? It doesn't work. And the problem and the reason is because historically ed tech vendors generally feel that they're the solution. Give the kids ed tech. Ed tech and the tech is like 10% of the solution. And 90% of the solution is a motivated kid, right? The two things you need to do to educate a kid is, first, motivated kid. Second, you need to put them in lessons of the right difficulty, right? You can't put kids in over their head. You put me in a med school exam, I can't read half the words. I can struggle, right? You can tell me to have all the grit in the world and try harder, and I'm not going to be able to answer the questions, right? Roll me back to freshman bio, I'm all set, and then build me up from there. And that's actually what AI tutors and ed tech does really well, is figure out what the kid knows and doesn't know and put them in the right difficulty of lesson, right? Create personalized lessons for each kid. And so there's that part. But the real part is all motivation and how do you solve the 90%. And so our entire school system, right, all we do, everything, my job for the last 2 years is all on the motivational part. And talking ways through it. So we call our system 2-hour learning, right? You can go to a website if you want, 2hourlearning.com. It'll tell you all the stuff. It has a big graph that says 90% of the problem's motivation. But when I first came in, right, remember I came from software. I was one of the dumb ed tech guys before I became a principal. And the product was actually 2x learning. You could learn twice as much. And so I'd sit around with the kids, right? I'm sitting there with the fifth graders. I remember it was like my first week. And I'm like, all right, guys, isn't this awesome? You guys are going to learn twice as much. Yeah, no, they don't care about that, okay, at all. Like, at all. Right, there's 10%, I guess one thing just for all these answers, there's 10% of the kids in the world who are super self-motivated, and those guys are the ones who like finish MOOCs and, do everything great on their own, and those kids love it. Oh my God, 2x learning. We have a second grader who's top 10%, 10th grade math, right? But that's it's 90% of the people were more like me in school, who are like, can I skip? Do I really have to go? What am I doing here? And so the 2x learning wasn't valuable at all. And I was like, well, what would make you guys love school? One of our core values of a school is that kids must love school. And we survey them every 6 weeks, right? And over 90% of our kids every 6 weeks are like, I love school. And it's not just we have a secondary to make sure it's really has edge in it. We say, would you rather go to school or give up your vacation? Right? And it depends on the session, like if they really like the workshops or not. But we get over 50% of the kids, right, every 6 weeks saying, I'd rather go on vacation. I'd rather go to school than go on vacation. And so I'm talking to them, I'm like, what's going to make you love school? They're like, less school. Less school. I'm like, how much less? Like, they're like 0. 0 sounds really good, Mr. Liemandt. I'm like, oh, that I don't know if we can do that. We're sort of a school. I'm like, how about, and we literally negotiated based on they're like, okay, yeah, if you 2 hours, I would give you give me a solid 2 hours, no screwing around, right? You're gonna like focus. How many hours will you give me? And they're like, I'll give you 2 hours if you give me 4 hours back, right? The code name of a software when we were writing it. So I went to our software team, and I was like, all right, code name time back, right? Give the kids their time back because that's what they want. And you guys got to figure out how to get everybody educated in 2 hours. And that is the single most powerful motivation that we have today, is just giving the kids the time back. And so, and we're down to 2 hours. The kids are pushing our engineering team. They get on meetings with them. They're like, when's 1 hour learning coming out? But that's that whole thing, is they want the time to do the stuff they love. And so we use that motivation, which is we don't focus on love of learning, so to speak. We focus on love of school, the nuance between it, because it doesn't, even that 10% of the kids, it's hard to have every kid love every subject every year, right? And we can teach, okay, when you're good at something, you like to do it more than when you're bad. And so when they start achieving academically, they're more interested in doing it. When they're not in lessons that are so hard they can't read the questions, right? They like it better. And so you can drive motivation through that element as well. But the single most important one we use is 2 versus 4. Now, given that, we also use lots of other ones.
Let's get into it.
You want to get?
Yes.
Let me give you.
It's the most important part.
No, we can talk for. I can talk for 35 more minutes on it. I'll give you. I'll do the controversial ones, not the easy ones. So we'll pay kids, just straight up pay kids. And yeah, the skeptical. Yeah, I had to sit.
Well, by the way, so when I heard this, I started bribing my son to read the books I want him to read. Yeah. And we have $2 books, $5 books, and $10 books. It's not just because he's like a little capitalist. He loves Legos, and he's like, "Dude, I want this Lego." I'm like, "That's a $600 Lego." It's getting. It's like we'll buy you everything.
That's a lot of books.
It's a lot of books, and so he reads the ones he likes, but he has a stack of dad books which he gets paid for, and he's been ripping through them. Yeah.
And so we use every motivational model that you can do. I mean, leaderboards and prizes and recognition, right? But there's 2 actually of the most powerful ones that you want. Money is the most broadly one that you can use, but it's very powerful. And so we limit it to 2 uses of when we use money. The first is if we're trying to develop daily habits in a kid. Right, where they don't have a routine and you are what you do. And so getting kids into a routine where we'll pay them every day. An example of this was our high school kids last summer went to Ukraine and to train 500 Ukrainian refugees on using they don't have schools and teachers, so it's perfect use. Let's have them go there. And so they flew there, and before they flew, right, the refugee workers, right, who are running the camps, are like, "Oh, they love learning. They're just dying for this. Come help them. It'll be great." And so our high school students get there and they start talking to the kids, and they called me. They're like, "Mr. Liemandt, yeah, they don't really care about learning at all, at all. And if we give them these Chromebooks, we did, and yeah, like the boys are watching porn. What should we do?" And I was like, "Well, what would you guys do?" And they're like, "Well, let's use some motivation. It's a motivation problem." And so they came back and they're like, $2.50 a day. Just pay these kids $2.50 a day to do 2 hours, because given their state, they're absolutely happy to do it and they'll crush through it. And so now there's 500 Ukrainian refugees who get paid $2.50 a day, and they crush their math. They do math and English as their 2 subjects.
And when you say crush, how are they doing compared to, say, American kids same age? Like, how are they? If you thought about like an average test score.
If you took Eaton school districts, one of the best school districts in Texas and Austin, they're learning faster than the kids in Eaton school district.
Incredible.
That's our benchmark of we always have to beat them. And so that would be one, pay for daily habits. The second one we do is when you're trying to change someone's intrinsic view of themselves. And so I'll use my daughter as an example, but this happens a lot. She loves being the example guinea pig. So I have 2 daughters. I have the older daughter who's the student and loves it, and like she's part of the 10% and reads calculus books for fun, and she's obviously not my kid. And then I have my younger daughter who very much is like, "Dad, what's the minimum I need to do? Like, just give me the bare minimums." And so when she hit top 10% academically, she came to me and she's like, "Dad, I'm not like Kate. I'm not top 1%. I'm top 10%. And so, I'm done." And I'm like, "Oh, Kate, her name's Elle. I'm like, Elle, I bet you $1,000 you can get to top 1%. And the one thing Elle loves more than anything else is shopping." And she's like, $1,000, Dad? I'm like, $1,000. And she created an Amazon cart with $1,000 in it. And every morning she'd look at that cart and she'd do her apps, right? And she'd do her apps. And this was a good one. This is a good one for the audience because my wife did not like this. There's lots of people who don't like this, and my wife was one of them.
My wife doesn't like that I bribe my son.
Yeah, and it was a combination of 2 things. One, you're pushing her too hard. She says she doesn't want to do it, so why are you pushing her? And number 2, I mean, it's just so wrong to pay kids to do this. Like, this is just wrong. I don't know what to tell you. My mom also called me and yelled at me. And so she does it, though, and she hits top 1%, right? We measure everything based on standardized tests. Grades, by the way, if you don't know, are just totally made up, right? You should never trust the grade a school gives you. And so she got to top 1%. And this is the part that mattered, was she sat down with my wife and is like, Mom, I know you hated this, but you need to understand how important this was to me. She's like, I always thought I was dumber than Kate, right? Because everybody told me my whole life, Kate's smart, blah, blah, blah. And I now realize I can do everything Kate can do. I just have to want to put the work in. And I literally now see that I'm a smart kid. I can do whatever I want.
It's beautiful.
And that transformation is available to every kid. So we now offer every middle schooler, right, $1,000 if they get to top 1%. And if you look at it, right, almost all our kids, right, within their 2 years of middle school actually get to top 1%. And it changes their view of themselves, right, from who I am and what I can do. And that's one of the problems with the standard teacher in front of a classroom model, is you can't do that, right? That teacher in front of a classroom model is an IQ-based system, right? Because the teacher's moving through it, and if you miss it, you miss it, right? And so pace of learning and all that stuff, it's higher IQ does better. In a mastery-based system like ours, right, it just doesn't matter. It might take you a little longer, right? But everybody can get there. There is no concept. I never say this, and God, I'm going to regret saying this like publicly. All of your kids, every kid can be top 10, what is the grade that is top 10% today through K through 8. The way Common Core was actually designed, right, the way the system was designed, it was designed so actually 95% of kids can master all the material, right? But that's not what our school system delivers, right? The reason I hesitate to say it is I said it my first day. I was like to all the parents, and remember I'm the new principal who doesn't know anything. And I'm like, oh, all you kids can be top 10%, don't worry about it, we'll get them there. And obviously all the parents thought I was totally whacked and didn't know what I was talking about. Now it's 2 years later, and 95% of our kids are all top 10%.
Yeah, I mean, that's counterintuitive to me too. I always thought that there was a median, and you could raise the level of the median, but exceptional means exception to the rule. There's like a law of exceptionalism. Do you believe in a law of exceptionalism then?
Well, there are different rates of learning, right? We've opened other schools besides Alpha this summer, one of which is a gifted, talented school. We don't test anybody. We'll take, no matter where you are, we'll take kids in the bottom 10%, median, top 10%, doesn't matter for most of our schools. GT school, gifted, talented school, you have to be in the top 10%. And those kids do, right, crush it and outperform. But that doesn't mean every kid at all my other schools can't be what is today considered top 10%. And so there are differences. Just if you study cognitive load theory and how brains work, right? Some kids need fewer repetitions from when you're thinking, think of flashcards. Some people need to see a flashcard fewer times, 5 times. Some people need to see it 15 times, right? For it to be stored in long-term memory. And so if it takes you 15 times instead of 5, it just takes you longer to learn. But it doesn't mean you can't learn the concept. You just have to learn it, put the 15 reps in instead of the 5. And so, but that's the biggest thing you should take away is all kids with these new apps. We just took over the, worst charter school in Austin, right? So we were asked to come take it over. All the kids are bottom 10% academically. And so when you think about a school like this, you don't realize how bad bottom 10% is. Like this is 4th, 5th, 6th graders who can't read, write. They don't know what, 6 times 4 is. Just all of that. And we'll get all those kids in 1 year to top 50%. Like just no chance. No doubt. Absolutely no doubt.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a number, and by the way, we got a little backbeat to our talk now, we got a little groove to our conversation right now. So you mentioned, all these different means of motivation. You did not mention the one that we see most prevalent in social media or gaming, which would be random prize generation or, variable feedback loops, loot boxes. I don't know if there's many of these. It's the same sort of concept as bingo or, slot machines. And it seems to be the most prevalent way to build a $1 billion social gaming company right now. So is that intentional that that's avoided? How do you feel about it? Based on your body language, it seems like you hate it.
No, it's actually a big debate. So we had this debate this summer, which is, video gaming is actually, right, you talk to the experts in video gaming, and they know more about motivating kids and addicting them than anybody alive. And they have categories. And so we talk to a lot of the video game teams, and they have white hat and black hat, categories. What you're describing, random generated loot boxes and stuff, are black hat because they're super addictive. And we have said we will not use those in our educational software. We had a long culture values discussion, right, of core values. What do we stand for? And, our core value is actually that our kids must learn, right? They have to love school, but they must learn. There's a lot of educational stuff out there where you don't really learn. And we're like, we really believe in that. And then the next one under it was, we decided, but it was a big debate, was we won't use black hat. Because this is just does the end justify the means? If I have a kid who's bottom 10%, he's in the 6th grade, he has, right, the education system's failed him. Can I put him into a black hat video game and just freaking crush it to get his education up? And we have voted no so far on that. Because white hat works, so we don't need to. So don't put me in a pressure where I actually need to do the black hat. But it works.
Yeah.
But we don't want to do that.
And do you think that's because there can be like sort of a patterning of that type of a behavior over time that you guys don't want to create foundationally?
Just to give you a scale of black hat, like video game companies can get 10-year-olds to steal their parents' credit card and charge $500 on it by using black hat techniques. And I'm just like, let's stay away from that. Yeah. That's too much. But the one other thing, and related to the video game side, the other, when I said there were two main motivations, cash was one, and we only use it, daily habits, or to change a student's intrinsic view of themselves, that it's worth it, right? It's worth $1,000. All you parents who don't think this is true, I would beg you to reconsider. It's worth $1,000, right? We spend $20,000 a kid per year in the public school system in the U.S., so we have plenty of money. We give every middle school kid, 1 year time, $1,000, and change their view of themselves forever. Right? We can do it. It's totally worth it. The second thing that is as powerful as cash to a middle school gamer boy is video games. And it is as good as cash, actually, sometimes better. So, and the story around this one, in January of this year, we took a bunch of kids, and back to video games. Let's take a survey here. How many of you would love to send your kid to video game school? Yeah, no, nobody wants to do that at all.
0 hands.
Nobody hands. It's really crazy. Now, I'm going to ask these following questions, and I will get you to raise your hand. Let's say your student is in middle school, and they're getting ready for high school, but they're 1 year behind. And high school is hard academically, and they're 1 year behind. And we could guarantee they could catch up. Would you do it then? What if they're 2 years behind? How about 3? There's a curve in most of our things. And so in this case, the parents raised their hand. We had a set of kids who had just come in. They were 2 years behind academically. And so our guide, they were not super motivated. They weren't excited. And she sat down with them and is like, what's going to do it for you? They're like, we want to play video games. And she's like, all right, here's what we'll do. And so literally they had to do 3-hour learning instead of 2-hour learning because they had to catch up. And she's like, you will have to make up 2 grade levels in 6 months, because it was January, by June. And we're going to put you on this 3-hour learning track, and you will make up 2 grade levels by June. And in return, we'll give you 90 minutes of video gaming in the afternoon workshop block. Every single kid made it. Every single kid made 2 years. And when we say made up 2 years, all of them on the Texas STAR state standardized test scored above 90. We had some who literally scored 100. And one of the kids who scored 100 in December, right, his mom was like, I don't know if Alpha's the right school for him. All these kids, these high expectations, top 10%. I just don't think my kid really is that smart to be able to do that, right? He's just not capable. 6 months later, with just letting the kid, literally nothing changed about the kid, except we motivated him by letting him play what he loved, video games, in the afternoon. He scored 100% on the state test, right? It's just those kind of things are all totally available.
It sounds too good to be true. And by the way, the reason I invited you here is not that I thought it sounded too good to be true. It's because I think it is the most exciting, the most inspiring thing happening in education that I've heard of globally. But I do want to talk about some of the things that you think need development. Like, what are the downsides? What are the things where you see this and say, okay, this is something that does fall off? Is it social? Are there any components of, the child development that you guys are saying, hey, because we're doing it this way, this does drop slightly, or this does need more work? Or tell us where you intend to lean in or where you want to see improvement.
Okay, I'm going to answer the question I want.
Oh, great.
The biggest impediment to this whole system is the parents. The reason every kid is not going to be able to access this is because of the parents. And this is it's just totally true. Parents want their kids educated the way they were educated. This is too new. It is too different. It sounds too good to be true. And myself as an example, the Mackenzie Price, who actually co-founded it, and for those of you, there's a Future of Education Instagram that she has that has all the stories and videos if you want to follow it. She was actually the one, and for 2 years, she's like, Joe, you got to send your kids to this school. Got to send your kids to school. I'm like, I'm not sending my kids to the whack out school. Like, no way, this is so weird. No. I went to Catholic school. I'm going to send my kids to Catholic school. And so my kids are in Catholic school, right? For 2 years, right? And then what happened is our school year ended. Alpha was still in session, and we have girls the same age. And so I was like, to my two daughters, I was like, oh, you want to do a week, before you guys go to summer camp, you want to do a week, at Alpha? And they're like, oh, sure, yeah, we'll go with, our friends. At the end of the week, they said, Dad, we don't want to go to summer camp. We want to stay at Alpha. And you have to remember, I hated school. I thought it was like, I couldn't believe there was a human who would ever say that. And it was my two daughters like saying, I don't want to go to camp. I'd rather do this. And that was sort of my eye-opening thing that I was like, oh my God, I have to change. But 2 years for me, and all of that, it's the rate of change of people willing to change educational systems, right? Back to teachers. When people hear AI tutor, right, you're like, oh, there's no way. I want that. Being able to separate the concept that teachers are critical, but teacher in front of the classroom is terrible, that's really hard for people to do. And so it's a big education thing. It's figuring all that kind of stuff out to be able to make it broadly applicable. And it's not just, so parents is level one. Then two, it's the systemic issues, right? I talk to superintendents of our public school who have 5 million kids, right? And if, these are, and back to financial, our big cities, right? They all spend over $30,000 per year per kid, right? LA has like 37 grand per kid that they spend. And so there's plenty of money.
And something like 40% is administrative, right? Like a massive amount of
massive administrative, and nobody knows, and the kids don't learn anything. It's terrible. But, in talking with them, they're like, now explain this to me. You want me to fire all my teachers, and then what do the kids do the rest of the day? They're just like, this is so far above my pay grade. I'm not making these decisions, right? Society has to make these decisions. Right? And so this is going to take time and effort to change all this because, right, this isn't an easy one. And what is the collective view of what the life skills what should we do the rest of the day, right? It's a lot of big things that have to happen. It's a lot of what I'm doing right now is I'm literally trying to figure out product market fit of what do we want to do. So like we have Alpha, which is this high-end private school where we're like, if money's no object, like how high is high? What can kindergartners do? Right? We have kindergartners who like ride their bikes 5 miles and, do crazy things. We have 5th graders who like launch Airbnbs or run Airbnbs. We have another group launching a food truck in Austin. Our middle schoolers heard our high schoolers went to Ukraine. They wanted to go. There are things that are impossible. Parents will not let your middle schoolers go to Ukraine. So they went to Poland instead, and they trained 500 refugees in Poland. So all of those, that's Alpha, but we opened up a sports academy, so the afternoon is all sports. We open up the Gifted Talented School, where the afternoon is all robotics, math Olympiad, writing books, whatever academic-oriented things. We opened up a middle school, pure middle school, video game school, right, for those to catch the kids up who needed it. We're opening up an arts, music, theater, an entrepreneur school. So it really is, what is going to change in the educational system, and how do we get there? And I believe that's the biggest thing, because this is coming, right? There will be software that you can download from the App Store, and they will be wrapped in motivational frameworks, even video games that will wrap around the 2-hour learning that your kid will do in 2 hours for fun and learn twice as much as they'd learn sitting in their class for 6. And as those get unleashed on the world, even if you're in standard school, your kids are going to wake up every day and say, I'm bored because I know everything that's being taught in class because I was playing this video game that taught me all this stuff.
Well, I think that's a motivator for parents, is like if you're starting to see that and other kids are learning at this rate and have these tools, to keep that away from your child would be a huge disservice. So there's something that has to do with just scale that makes it inevitable, where everybody essentially has to do this.
No, we have to prove it. That's why all of our stuff is all standardized tests and proving, in different demographic groups. We have a school down in Brownsville where it's half SpaceX kids and half local scholarship kids.
That's super interesting.
Where the kids come in the bottom 25% if you're local transferring in. If you're SpaceX kids, you're generally in the top 25%. They all are in the same apps. They're all learning twice as much in 2 hours a day.
And how are you seeing the distribution of exceptional outcomes, top 1%, top 10%, as these kids have been in that mixed school a little longer? For most in K through 8, it really is kids' interest versus IQ that drives the exceptional performance. If the kids want to just go through it, they can just sit. So we had one kid who really likes math, right? And so he would just go home and bring his computer, and during the summer was always on his computer doing math, and he loved it. And his mom's like, go outside, and he'd bring his computer outside and do it, right? And he just really loved it, right? And he went up 6 grade levels over the summer, right? And so it really is just interest. If you're interested in something, you can accelerate and go at your own pace and become an expert around it. And so anyway, but back to the parents, that's the part, is you have to prove it to parents, right? Parents need 2 things to move their kids from a school, generally from one school to another, which is, first, they need a reference from an adult they trust. Did this work for your kid? I don't want my kid to be a guinea pig. Are you sure? Right? So you need a reference. It's very much a reference sale, credibility. And the second thing is they need to see a kid at that school do something their kid can't do. And that creates FOMO, because every parent does not want to have their kid left behind, right? They want to make sure that they're doing everything they can to provide for their kids. And so if they see those where, okay, look at that, and there's an adult who's like, no, it totally works for my kid, those are the things that we have to get out. Unbelievable. And Joe is dedicating, he built an incredibly successful software company that had a really fantastic outcome. He's dedicated his time and his capital to solving this issue at scale. When I first heard about it and met Joe, I was basically like, well, anything I can do, wherever, whenever. There's just not enough people in the world that have the capacity, that are willing to go in themselves. And so one, I just want to applaud the fact that not only are you spending money, donating money, investing money, but you literally show up every day at the school and work on the product and the project. And it's just absolutely incredible. And I feel greedy with your time and with your intellect here on this particular topic. I've been just firing questions at you now for 50 minutes, but I do want to know about the future here. I imagine you have a vision about where this goes. So paint a picture for us. Here we are. It's 10 years from now. Perhaps that's too far out. Maybe it needs to be 5 years. But where do we go from here? What is the vision of education that you want to see?
Sure. Let me answer the first part, though, about involvement. Education's going to change. And for those of you who are interested in it, there is nothing more fulfilling and rewarding right, than being in education. So it is not you should not feel this is, hard for me. I was in software forever, did really well. My days today are 10 times better than they ever were. It's awesome. And so for anybody who has any inkling, we do get a lot of people who have kids who are like, okay, you know what? I want to move. I want to move to education. We need innovators. We need entrepreneurs. We need people who are willing to break the mold and do things differently if we're going to rebuild education. And we need a lot of them, right? We need a lot. Education's a $1 trillion industry, K through 12 in the US, right? We have to go build 10,000 schools, right? Back to capital, we need a ton, right? Donations don't get this done. We need to build this billions and billions of dollars. It gets eaten up fast. I put the first $1 billion in to set this going, and you're like, wow, AI is going to take a lot of capital. So is rebuilding the entire educational system. And so anything I do as a sales pitch to get people involved, it's totally worth it. It's awesome. And then the second question of where's it going to be? There's two dimensions, and I'll answer this part first and we don't know, right? Which is, what is the future 5 and 10 years from now in a time of AI? Are we preparing? We sit around and stress about, okay, delivering Common Core, we got that. It's 2 hours, maybe we'll get to an hour. All the kids are going to learn that. Okay, what really matters 5 years and 10 years from now when AI is smarter than all the humans, right? What is that? What is that world, and what do we have to do to get kids ready for it? Because if we got 12 years, right? Our kindergartners, how are we getting them ready, for that future world? And it is scary because who knows of what we're doing, but I can tell you what we're doing is going to be 10 times better than what the existing system is. And so, for example, we have, if you go to our GT kids, their slogan that they use is they're like, we're going to be the last humans smarter than AI, right? And that's their goal, right? Is we're going to be the last ones. And you're like, they totally are, right? That's what you want. Our high schoolers, right? So at high school, when you get to high school, what we do is if you want to be on the top 20 track, Ivy League track, we do 3-hour learning where you're doing SAT, AP work in the mornings. But all kids in the afternoon do what we call Alpha X projects. And these are their big passion projects that they're going to work on for 4 years. And they're Olympic level in size, that there's something that is being as impressive as being an Olympian. And so when you think about expectations, right, we have very low expectations around what our kids can do generally. The one place where we don't believe that is actually the Olympics, right? We don't tag Olympians with that's good for their age. You literally are like, no, they're the best in the world. Yet every other high school endeavor, you're like, oh, that's super awesome for their age, right? And what our high schoolers do is Olympic level projects where they are the best in the world, right? They're just not athletes. So, for example, one of our 17-year-olds just testified at Congress around food safety, right, as the domain expert, right? She was half the age of anybody else there, right? She's now probably gonna she's a freshman now at University of Austin, the new university there, and I probably shouldn't say this publicly, but she'll probably drop out and join the administration RFK stuff about the new FDA rules about food safety. And just because she's a world's expert, we have lots of kids who do things that are considered best in the world.
We want more examples.
And so if you take raising money, just as a simple one. So we have he was a great mountain biker, right? Did tons of mountain biking. And he's like, I'm going to go build a bike park. And he went out and he raised $3 million.
I met this kid, Joe Liemandt, running him around.
So
he's talking to Powder Mountain now.
Yeah. So Rhett Jones is his name. And he was just a mountain biker as a little freshman. And when he started, and he's like, I don't know what I could do. I'm like, well, what do you love to do? Back to following what your passion is. He's like, well, I love mountain biking. right? And he's like, but there's no good mountain bikes in Austin, right? All in Texas, they all suck, right? And he went and toured all the best, bike parks around the country. And this guy is, he can talk to you for 15 minutes about the composition of dirt, right? And what makes a good bike trail, right? And he's just a total expert because he loves it, right? And gets into it. And so, but he didn't know about building a business. And so his project every time was he learned how to build a P&L. And, he went out and he emailed everybody on LinkedIn who had both mountain biking and an investor in their thing, sent out 500 and got people to respond back and help them. One of the things we teach all our kids is that successful adults overinvest in ambitious kids, right? That if you have an ambitious kid, they do. So all these, right, people would help him. They taught him how to build a business plan, right, and got it. And then actually at the end of it, after they'd met him, they're like, "God, we'll invest," right? And so he launched a bike park. He makes like $50,000 a month. As a high school student, we have kids, there's back to some of these ones where they're social media experts, YouTube kids who make $1 million a month, and are building businesses and products. We have a set of high schoolers, back to their ambitious project, is they are building an app that is going to teach kids how to stay smarter than AI. Back to this world where they're wrapping it all together. And they believe they're going to be able to build an app. Now, they're building it for, teenagers, for high school kids. But I saw the review of it. I was looking at what they're building. And I'm like, you understand that that's really good for adults, too. There's nothing, this app is actually an incredible mechanism when people are worried about what's going to happen to AI. This app, and it's not done and they have to finish it all, but that's the kind of stuff that they're working on, where they're like, yes, I'm going to build, as a high schooler, I'm going to build the next Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, all those kind of apps, the app that teaches everybody more than AI themselves.
It's incredible. It's an amazing age to have that kind of relentless optimism matched with the willingness to learn how to do things the right way. I find that once we get older, we either do one or the other, typically. We're either a little naive or a lot of naive, and we have big, grand ideas, or we settle for 75% of the dream.
Yeah, and to that, the naive, they're definitely all naive, right? These high school kids don't know what they're doing, but they have endless enthusiasm and their optimism for the future. Right? They are looking forward to AI that gives them superpowers. They realize that AI makes them better than adults. And they all think, if you go to Alpha High and talk to the kids, they won't say it overtly, but they definitely believe that AI is going to wipe all you guys out and they are going to thrive. That is very much, the Terminator's coming for you guys, not them. Right? And so they're very optimistic because it lets them do things they can't do, and it puts them at a level of performance that wouldn't, 5 years ago, you couldn't expect a high school student to do it.
Well, they're probably right. I've Googled things for my grandparents. It's not the same thing. They're native to it. We're not. It's highly likely that they're right. We're almost at time. I want to thank you. It's been amazing. Can we give it up for Joe, guys? What an incredible talk. Where do you want to leave it? Last words. Walk off home run. What do you want to leave us with?
For everybody here, 5 and 10 years from now, if you have a youngster, their 12 years of education is going to be 10 times better than what you went through. They are going to be able to thrive, right, and accomplish things that today, if you wrote down on a list you think things are impossible, they will be crushing through all of that. AI is going to affect tons of society. The place it's going to have the biggest and most positive impact is on all our kids. It is going to transform their first 12 years into an awesome experience. And we all have a lot of work to do to make it happen, but there's nothing more important than us working on that.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you all.